Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Legal Tech Week for May 10th, 2024. We were off last week, so lots to talk about today. Joe was at the ILTA Evolve conference. I was at Jazz Fest in New Orleans, taking a week off. Uh, Gene wrote about the first year birthday of the vLex fast case merger. Joe's daughter is celebrating her first year birthday, and whole lot of other stuff to talk about, including a bunch of mergers or acquisitions over the last week. So a busy show and lots to talk about. I'm officially wearing my Jazz Fest hat today. If you don't know what Jazz Fest is, it's a pretty amazing event that happens every year down in New Orleans. I've never been to it before, but I've always wanted to go to it. It's sort of my been on my bucket list of things I wanted to go to for years, and I'm trying to write a post. I haven't gotten too far in it yet on like what Jazz Fest has to teach about legal tech. So I'm trying to make that stretch, and you can read more about it at some point. I'll come up with something. There are a few things I think, but really cool thing. Victor, have you ever been? You talked about it a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, because I went to law school in New Orleans. So
Oh, that's right.
actually, the first 2 years I was in law school, I could never go because Jazz Fest always took place during finals. But then my third year, I was like, all right, well, forget it. I mean, I already had my job lined up. My grades were what they were. They weren't going to, really deviate too much from what I was usually getting. So I was like, I'm going to go. So I went my third year. It was like 2004, I guess. I had a blast. It was I saw Steve Winwood, who I love, and I know a couple. I think Dr. John performed. He was a local, so he always performed every year. And there were a couple other people that I saw as well. But yeah, it was a blast. Like it's not jazz. It's like it's mostly popular music at this point. I think it started off as a jazz festival, but now it's like all kinds of popular music. And I think Santana plays like every couple of years. Dave Matthews Band plays like like every couple of years as well. I think Tom Petty was there a bunch of times as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and the food is really good there. Like they have these really awesome like vendors there. And I didn't always like the Louisiana cuisine, but I enjoyed the food down there. So yeah, I would go back in a heartbeat. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the food is amazing at this thing. It's
Sacrilege, Victor. You don't like Louisiana cuisine? That's like
I can't I
sacrilege.
can't take spicy food, so
Okay.
it's yeah.
There was
well,
a
it's
I saw I saw a movie a few months ago, and it was a fine movie, but the thing that stuck out to me is they have a line. They fly to New Orleans, and they have a line. New Orleans, 1,000 restaurants, one menu, and
But yeah, this is actually more interesting than walking around the French Quarter where all the restaurants have exactly the same menu.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, they just got a whole bunch of more sort of Creole and Cajun variations on things. And like I'm largely a vegetarian. My wife is 100% a vegetarian. And they've actually had a whole bunch of really cool like Creole vegetarian options that you wouldn't have thought of. Just amazing stuff. And then, I mean, the one of the big highlights this year was the Rolling Stones playing there, but they did this thing where the song the "Time Is on My Side" was originally recorded by a woman named Irma Thomas, who also plays at Jazz Fest every year, is sort of like the queen of Jazz Fest in New Orleans. And apparently, the Rolling Stones had like Mick Jagger had basically copied her version of the song word for word, where she had improvised a little bit. He copied her improvisations and never credited her over the years for that.
Mm.
And so here he invited her up on stage with him and thanked her for writing the song and for the way she did it. And then they performed it together, and that was a pretty cool thing. And then there's like Neil Young, Foo Fighters, Steel Pulse, Bonnie Raitt. I mean, it's an amazing list of artists, and there's like 14 different stages, and there's artists playing on every stage at every moment. You can just like you can't choose what to do. So, but there's also there is a sort of a direct legal tech angle to it all, which is uh, Tom O'Connor. People know Tom O'Connor. It's an e-discovery consultant. If you've ever been to Legal Week or Relativity Fest or any of various conferences, you would know Tom because he's got big white bushy beard and big white bushy hair, and maybe more famous for having been the husband of Gail O'Connor, who was a presence at many legal tech conferences over the years. Um, and Tom lives literally across the street from the entrance to Fest, and his front porch is like the center of socialization for this whole community of people that he's come to know from living in New Orleans over the years. And he also, every year, a guy named Dave Glynn goes to Tom's house, who happens to also be a legal tech guy. Dave works for the Law Bulletin Publishing Company up in Chicago, and has run a lot of their digital publishing initiatives over the years and technology initiatives over the years. And so we got to see Tom. And Tom at one point said, like, you got to come over Saturday morning before it all starts, because we're going to be doing a crawfish boil right here in my front yard, right across the street from the entrance to the festival. And we get over there. My son Ben was also there, and we walk over about like 1 o'clock, and we get to Tom's house. We can see Tom's house a couple of houses away, and there's like cops all over the place. There was like a dozen cops standing in front of Tom's house. We're like, oh shit, he's getting busted for like an illegal crawfish boil or something. Turns out he's got them there like helping him cook the crawfish. He's like befriended all the cops in the neighborhood. They come over and they help him cook it. And then they all come over with their like little styrofoam plates and fill themselves up and get in their cars and go off. It's such a funny scene to see. And anyway, so big thanks to Tom O'Connor for hosting me several times, and also serving as an emergency bathroom stop on the way in and out of Jazz Fest, where bathrooms weren't always easy to find. So that was fun. Had nothing to do with legal tech, but that's okay.
But
It's good to get
did you
away.
go to the Rolling Stones show?
So I didn't go to the Rolling Stone
Oh.
show because I bought my tickets too late for that to get to that. That was a special ticket. But I'm seeing the Rolling Stones in 3 weeks in Boston, so
Well,
that's
remember,
good.
I wrote that story about Laurie Cohen, the woman who lost her voice and got it back with AI, the Greenberg Traurig litigator.
Yeah,
She follows them like everywhere. She's like front, like there's a group of them around the world, and she's always in the front. Like she's seen them. It was at 145 before this tour, so she was at the New Orleans one and the one before it too. So I got to see the pictures of what you were talking about. So she was there for that too. So plenty of legal goings on at Jazz
yeah,
Fest. Yeah.
yeah. The funny thing about Jazz Fest, again, this has nothing to do with legal tech, is like felt like the average age of the star musicians was like 80 or something. It was so weird. I mean, it's like I saw Foo Fighters and Dave Grohl is what, like maybe 55 or something, and he seemed like one of the young people at the conference. Or I mean, probably actually the most dynamic act I saw there was Joe Bonamassa, the blues guitarist, who was just like crazy. But he's, I don't know, 40s maybe. I don't know what he is at this point. But definitely lots of young people there, and just an amazing thing. I highly recommend you all do it. If you all do it next year, we'll do an episode of the show from there. How about that? Maybe work that out. We could do a whole podcast tent to add to their blues tent and gospel tent and whatever else.
Yeah. Take the show on the road.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can boot like the Pearl Jam performance or whoever's there next year.
yeah, awesome. All right. Well, so, Joe, you were on the road a little bit over the last couple of weeks too, and you wrote I really like the post that you wrote out of going to the ILTA Evolve, the first ever ILTA Evolve conference.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, we go to a lot of these shows, right? And we love uh, how we get to interact with vendors and hear their stories, hear what's going on. Many of the people in the audience are the folks who set those meetings up. And so, I love them. That said, part of it is I then, all those meetings take up so much time. I haven't seen like an actual panel in years. And what ILTA Evolve, I wasn't actually excited about ILTA Evolve before going, because it was just another thing on my calendar, and I was like, got to go to this. But the concept of it was really cool. What they decided to do is take their existing kind of security conference, and what they hope to do is create kind of an auxiliary ILTA that focuses just on the two issues they think in any given year are the biggest issues. This year it was AI and security. Probably will be for a few years in the future, but they want to keep it flexible for what's really interesting, and they want to run those education tracks on that, on the two really cool subjects in this smaller, more intimate meeting. And it meant that everybody was going to programming. Even the booths were empty half the time because people were going to watch the programming. I got to see a ton of events, and yeah, I thought it was a fantastic idea for a show, especially as a journalist who doesn't get to see a lot of panels. So yeah, I wrote a few stories from there. The biggest one, the first one that I put out, I think, was there was a great panel talking about the ways, what's going on behind the scenes at the firm to vet AI to make sure that as it's being introduced, it's not introducing new security risks. I thought it was really fascinating, and I fulfilled my role of trying to lecture disgruntled lawyers who read above the law on the back end to explain to them that the absolute worst thing you can do is at the very last second go, hey, I have some ideas about this. It has already been through a lot of checks before you get there. I also talked a little bit about, prompt insertion and some practical stuff. There was a great panel that I saw that talked about some of the practicalities of how to prompt these things, and kind of touched on an idea that I hadn't really thought of. I'm rambling here rather than discussing, so I'll turn it over in a sec. But an idea that I hadn't really thought of, which is that these kind of commercial chat GPTs and stuff, people type in a search like, hey, it's like a sentence, maybe two, show me where this is, and then it spits something out, and then they move on, and it's probably bad, and they therefore decide it can't work. The people who are really doing good things with these tools, these prompts are like 4 paragraphs long, like they're detailed, and that sort of practical education. It was a very short panel that we had, but as it was going on, I was like, see, now that I think is what a lot of people don't know, that you can stretch this tool in ways that are really interesting. And so I thought that was something that is kind of the next frontier. Even if the tools themselves have not gotten cool enough to do everything in the world, we need to start transitioning to talking more about how to game them to do the cool things they can do now.
So, Joe, did this mean that no one was badgering you to do interviews and there were no vendors there trying to get your time, or did you
Tons of vendors. No one was badgering for interviews. They were with me sitting in the panel discussions. It
sounds great.
It was really interesting. Yeah, because it was smaller. There were vendors, but they weren't. It wasn't like any over the top. I don't think. I may be wrong, but I don't think there were any. I think it was a kind of a communist style. I think every booth was the same size. I don't think anybody was allowed to outsplash anybody else. But yeah, no, everybody. Many times I walked by booths where no one was sitting there because they had been in the room with me, watching some panel where we talked through things. And it was. I think they picked the right 2 subjects between security and AI. I don't know what the future holds, but I like the idea of cycling it to whatever they think the big things are, and just kind of getting some of the good programming out of the way before we end up at a future ILTA Disney where nobody wants to walk to the 4th hotel to see something.
Did you say what the attendance was like at it?
There were 330, I believe, people there. So smaller, obviously, than some of the things we go to, but it was just kind of like right sized.
Cool.
Although there is no ILTA Disney this year, it's all inside that fake. It's inside the fake outside in Nashville.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Well, yeah, you said Nashville. That's not true.
I know. Well, it's inside the
Tennessee.
fake outside of fake Nashville.
In Tennessee somewhere.
Yeah.
There was Clock this week too, but nobody went, right? I mean, not nobody, but none of you went to Clock, right?
No.
Stephanie, you didn't even have any of your reporters there or anything, right?
No. A reporter from our corporate counsel publication went.
Oh, yeah.
Which we kind of decided, based on what I've been hearing, was a pretty good division of labor, because we could still handle any press releases or product announcements or whatever that came out, and a lot of the sessions seem to be less tech intensive and more sort of general. So I'm being very diplomatic in what I'm saying, because I wasn't there. I don't want to characterize sessions I wasn't at. but like advice for GCs and things like that, and not really anything that would be mind-blowing for a more tech audience. So she could write up those panels, and we could handle the tech announcements, and yeah.
Yeah, it is. We've talked about the proliferation of conferences, and it is like last week there was it clock was just this past week, or is it? Yeah, it's just this
Yeah,
past week.
ended like yesterday.
The Adderant user conference thing was on this past week. iManage is coming up in like a week or something. There's
There
just
was a
so many.
public interest conference this week too, opposite clock. Something access to justice. I don't remember. There's too many. That's why
Oh yeah,
I'm making your point. Yes.
yeah.
Oh, and I didn't even talk about there was a great access to justice panel that I attended too, which I haven't even had a chance to write up. But there's Sunday and Kane and Dr. Elliott and everybody. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah. Where there's an access to justice panel, there's Kristen Sonde. It's like she's become the usual suspect to have on one of those panels. I mean, she's great. I love her.
Yes,
but it
she
is
was
funny
the
how
one-
it's like.
She was the one who posted on LinkedIn about how there was an access to justice conference opposite Legal Week and another one opposite clock. That's how I know there was another one this week opposite clock. And she
Right.
was like, how can we stop having them opposite these other major conferences? It's not helping the cause.
Oh yeah, no, that came up in the panel actually,
Yeah.
and I very much threw you all under the bus over it. Yeah, like I think that's just because ALM does not care about access to justice.
Well, in actual sort of legal tech news over the past week or so, Stephanie, there was what you have called acquisition Palooza.
As this week, of course, when we were short-staffed and it was like whack-a-mole with announcements, like every day I turned around, it was 3 in the course of 2 days. It was just like acquisition. And then like one of them gave like 4 hours notice maybe. But yeah, DocuSign acquired Lexion for 165 million in cash, or they signed the agreement. They expect it to close in the next few weeks, about 165 million in cash. And then Reveal acquired, oh my gosh, Anna. Yeah, I'm out of brain power by the end of Friday. I apologize, everybody. And then the next day, Elevate acquired the CJK group, a multilingual. They focus on like multilingual e-discovery, specifically Asian, like cross-border deals. So yeah, it was just 3 in the course of 2 days. It was acquisition. Curious about the Reveal thing because even in the past, Wendell Gisa has said he likes to do acquisitions in pairs, and that has played out. So stay tuned, I would imagine, for another one soon. I don't know. I mean, the one when they did Logical iPro was the only one they did literally as a pair, but in tandem, like they've done like within a matter of like a couple months, they've done what they see as complementary acquisitions as a pair. So who knows what will come from that, but it was just suddenly turn around and everyone was acquiring everybody.
I'm like quickly looking at my email because there was some other one. I mean, I was on vacation for the past week, so I was not keeping up with all of this stuff. But there was one other one I saw. I could swear I saw another one in my email box also this week, a smaller one, but it's crazy. So,
And yeah,
all
so
interesting.
rather than link all the stories, I realized, I didn't realize until I put it on LinkedIn that we've put together these like hub page kind of things and then never told anybody that we did them, which doesn't really help anybody. But one of them is it's our deal tracker where we put all of the stories. Obviously, there's only so much we can cover, but it's all of the M&A stories in legal tech that we cover. We've dumped them all on this page. So if you go to that page, you can read the individual stories. So we have other ones too that I realize we'll start publicizing. Like there's one where we do investments and things like that too. But that deal tracker one, you can find all 3 of the ones from this week and whatever we've covered. We went back to the beginning of 2022. I mean, there's limits to how far we're going to go back in our archives, but there you go.
So,
Great resource. I already shared that link with a couple of people in my company. This is a good link to have.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of my cases in there and a couple of, yeah.
Well, it's like people in my industry, like every company has people that are really tracking the market. And they're the ones that really, that's a great resource for them. I didn't realize it's all on one page, so that's awesome.
Well, also on the M&A front, not new news, but year-old news is that vLex Fastcase merger. And Gene, you had a great interview with Ed Walters on the first anniversary of that. I was like, the same way I responded when I heard Joe's daughter reached her first birthday. I was thinking, it's been a year since the vLex Fastcase
I know.
merger.
I had to ask him because I didn't I wanted to interview him. I thought I think it's about a year ago, but it was. Anyway, let me all stun you by saying I saw the Rolling Stones in a theater, the New York Academy of Music, and I don't know, I should date myself, 1965, and I think the tickets must have been $5. And I also saw them at Shea Stadium one year where their opening acts were, hold on to your seats, the McCoys and the Tradewinds. Tradewinds famous for doing the song Mind Excursion. And and the stadium was empty. I don't know why the Rolling Stones had fallen out of favor, but it was like two rooms.
I guess people probably thought the Mets were playing.
Touche. Anyway, so it
Or
was
people at
great.
that point probably thought they were too old.
That's right.
Well, there was a stretch in like was it the 80s or the 70s where they were really
Well,
bad.
this would have been
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
60s. Sorry.
It was when Tattoo You came out that they kind of really started to pick up. I went to that one when I was in high school. So that's when they really started to kind of pick up again. Remember
Yeah.
that part? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we all think they've been forever at the top, but they've definitely had some ups and downs. So anyway, so talking to Ed was wonderful, and I guess the big news was one of Fastcase vLex's biggest impediments in moving up in the legal market has been the absence of a citator, and he says they've been working for the past year on CERT, which is going to be a full-blown citator, and I believe they're going to announce it at the ALL conference this summer. And they got it was a combination of their having acquired Judicata and then the vLex, whatever the magical vLex technologies. And Ed was really honest. He just said that he knew when generative AI came out, he knew that Fastcase wasn't really going to be in a position to compete, that they needed to ally themselves with a company with stronger technology. And so, it was just, we talked about a lot of different things. And one of my funnest part of the conversation was talking to him about teaching robot law at Georgetown, which he started teaching 10 years ago. And he said it was like teaching a science fiction class because they were just speculating on all the what ifs, like what if algorithms could do this, and what if it could actually answer questions and do the same work as lawyers. And so he said that today he regards it as a contemporary history class where they're not speculating on use cases. They're still looking into all the privacy, the security, the ethical issues, but the way the class is viewed is very different. And he also talked about the explosion of, and I was really glad to hear this, of IT related classes. He said that next semester, Georgetown is going to have 18 classes related to technology and one completely devoted to artificial intelligence. So, I remember, I think 10 or 15 years ago, we were all complaining about when is legal tech going to move into the mainstream of law school curriculum, and it does appear to be finally happening. He also said there are definitely students coming into law school who have entrepreneurial ideas and want to get involved in legal tech rather than the practice of law. And I guess that also, we also had, I had asked him what he thought about, I don't know if you all saw this, but artificial lawyer quoted Gartner as saying that the legal tech market was worth 50 billion, and he thought that was a huge underestimate, that he thinks it's going to be between 250 million and 125 billion. Like he just thinks that it's there's a lot of opportunity to growth, especially, and he, because he's always focused on doing good, and he talked a lot about the underserved, and that there are so many opportunities for legal technology to expand and be available to all the people who get nothing. Most of the market is focused on the largest firms, and there's such a latent market for the in between, for people below the AmLaw 200 line. So it was just, a great conversation all over the map. I also asked him if he thought, I think I sort of see generative AI is going two ways. Either the market is going to explode into 1,000 little applications, or there's only going to be one humongous, like a singularity. One company takes over everything. And I'm still not sure which way it's going to go. So I don't know. If any of you read it and have comments, I'd be interested.
Yeah, no, I just thought overall. I think you covered the key points that I thought were notable about it. I just thought it was it was a good interview, and it was a kind of a frank and honest interview on his part, as you said.
And that's what I always appreciate about talking to Ed, because he always is pretty upfront and honest, and it's always a good. I remember the first time I ever talked to him in this role, we both ran over by like 20 minutes without realizing it, because like we started getting into his Law of Robots class exactly because of that. It's great because he teaches that at Cornell Tech too, because they do the classes jointly with Cornell Law. And I think that institution is a really interesting place where you are seeing a lot of this more like hands-on with the legal, because it is a legal education aspect, but it is more of the Cornell Tech side, the doing side. And I'm really curious to see what comes out of there. Mm-hmm. I don't think nearly enough for most of our likings law schools are tackling this, but I get so encouraged when you hear some schools taking on and doing. I wish there was an easier way to figure out, like do a survey of all of the law schools that are actually starting to seriously teach AI or even legal tech to a significant degree.
So if law schools are teaching AI and legal tech, they should probably also be teaching lawyers how to sue AI and legal tech companies, because according to Victor and the ABA, that's a emerging new practice area.
Right, I thought you were gonna do like a Rolling Stones related segue. It'd be like, starting up the lawsuits, or
start it up,
or yeah, that's all I had. Sorry. I'm not a huge Rolling Stones fan. I like some of their stuff, but I don't know. I've never
like Rolling Stones. You don't like Cajun food.
I didn't say I don't like them. I'm not gonna spend money to go see them.
Okay.
But
yeah, he's all in on Barry Manilow and.
No, I think the oldest act I've ever seen, like when Cream reunited, like very very briefly in like the early 2000s. I went to the show, and I think it was like me and a bunch of like burned out hippies from the 60s. So I think I was probably the youngest person in the crowd. But
Who wants to talk about rock and roll, not his story?
No, well, so one of our business of law writer Danielle Braff wrote the story about how like you said, like suing AI companies, and also lawsuits against artificial intelligence companies, and also this all like it's a growth. I mean, for people who are worried about AI taking their jobs, this is actually a growth field for lawyers. You have to monitor and it's a wide range of things. You monitor monitoring deep fakes, like protecting copyright, protecting intellectual property, copyright law, trademarks. Looking at in the employment side, you can look at these algorithms. Some of them are being sued for exhibiting bias, or like in their hiring and whatnot, or people people using it and not disclosing it, or things like that. So so a lot of law firms are staffing up. big law firms, small law firms. They're looking for lawyers who have experience in this field, and some of them, some lawyers are even going back and taking classes to kind of get up to speed on this kind of stuff. So it's definitely a growth industry for people. I mean, a lot of people talk about doom and gloom for lawyers and how AI is going to take a lot of their jobs or take a lot of jobs from certain types of lawyers, maybe like the lower level stuff. But this is definitely a growth industry for people. So lawyers out there or students or whatnot who are looking to, who are a little bit worried about these kind of things and want to have some job security, maybe this is the way to go. At least until the machines then figure out a way to get around those lawyers and take this work themselves. But that probably won't be for at least for another couple months. So
Right. I thought it was really interesting, two things, like what you just alluded to, the fact that it's happening so fast in terms of AI advancement, but that's also driving extreme growth in those, the numbers of those lawyers in those practice groups. That was pretty telling. I can't remember the exact numbers from your article, but like in 1 year, it sounded like one of them went from nothing to like 60 lawyers. So I thought that was really interesting. And also one of the people that you interviewed, or that the writer interviewed, talked about how the lawyers that go into that practice area have to have the ability to be flexible and learn as they go, which I think is interesting because that's sort of the opposite of what a lot of old school lawyers want to do, or at least, senior lawyers. And so I think it's interesting to see that it's sort of a sign of the times too, that's going to have to start just becoming part of who and what we are as lawyers in order to keep up with the change, because it's happening so fast. And I think it's not just in AI, it's going to be in everything, because the tech advancement is going to just impact pretty much, I think, every area, every practice area, and all the different, and even like evidentiary information and litigation. Like, it's going to be really interesting.
All right. Well, before we move off the topic of AI, I didn't even put this on the list of things we're going to talk about today, but I completely forgot that we hadn't done a show last week. But I did an update last week on Harvey, which I see Andrew Aruna is in our audience today, and Andrew is not only is he a seed investor in this company, but I felt like there were some parallels here because, and Andrew will know this, but for a long time in the early days of Ross was kind of criticized for being kind of secretive about its product and not showing its product, and people wondered, what's the there where people weren't seeing it. And then Harvey, which has had this like phenomenal year of fundraising and getting lots of buzz, but very few people have ever seen Harvey. Very few people ever tried the product. I mean, they've picked up a couple of major clients, Allen and Overy and PwC and some other McFarland, some other large firms. They've raised a whole bunch of money. They're now valued as, they were just launched less than 2 years ago, really just came out of stealth about a year and a half ago and already valued at about $750 million. So it was interesting to finally sit down. I talked to the founders a number of times in their earlier days, and they'd let me actually try out the product in the early days, but then hadn't talked to them in a while. I mean, they're partly saying that part of the reason that they really haven't been doing a lot of publicity around this is they never got around to hiring marketing and PR people. I mean, they've been really focused on product development. They've been kind of nose to the grindstone on building out their product. They've been doing a whole lot of customization of their AI for their customers. That's been kind of their model, is to take their technology and really kind of custom train it, to fine tune it for the firms that they're working with. But interestingly, they did say that that's kind of going to change soon, that this summer they're going to be coming out with, they're going to start being more open about their products, start attending conferences, showing what they have, and also come out with a sort of a more, in a sense, off the shelf version of their product that will be something where you'll kind of be able to purchase it on a somewhat more modular basis, and without all the customization, but taking advantage of a lot of the they'll be doing sort of customization around certain tasks before they put the market out there, and then you'll be able to develop these sort of custom built, acquire these custom built models for very specific tasks. A big focus of this has been, we're talking about case law research. They're talking about coming out with a whole aspect devoted, one of these modules or products devoted very heavily to case law research. They've been partnering with OpenAI specifically to build these custom trained case law modules for U.S. law and for the law of a number of other jurisdictions, and they're going to be putting that out to market. So, kind of not a lot of very highly specific details on what these things are going to look like yet, but according to them, we will know soon. Another thing we've already talked about in this episode is the access to justice issue, and they say that they are very committed to being able to try and use their technology for access to justice, to enhance access to justice. They've already, and this has been publicly announced before, but they've already announced this partnership with court officials in Singapore to create ways to help pro se litigants in small claims cases get answers to legal questions more
Isn't
quickly.
the answer you get caned? I thought wasn't that that's the place where like somebody chewed gum and they got caned. I feel like authoritarian countries are the easiest ones to have legal.
I think he did a little more than just chewing gum, but yeah.
That was a very famous story in like the 90s or something.
Well, because then The Simpsons made the Simpsons made fun of it with the boot episode. By the way, speaking of which, happy Whacking Day, everybody, for Simpsons. Is
that a punishable
early season? It's the early season Simpsons episode where they kill all the snakes in town on Whacking Day.
Okay.
May 10th every year.
I was going to ask a Harvey question.
I was too, but you go first.
I thought that was Joe's Harvey question.
I don't know. Do they celebrate Whacking Day?
I was setting it up, and then all right, go.
You take too long, Joseph. You said the first time they didn't let you look at it or play around with it or see it? Did they this time?
Well, no, the first time they did. I was able to use it back in, it was like January of 2023 or something. I had access to it for a while. And then it was this time. No, I have not seen anything this time.
Okay.
So, and this is kind of a general thing, and this goes back to actually something Gene was saying about like this can go multiple ways. When I think of the Harvey situation, I wonder to what extent partnering with these companies, with OpenAI and stuff like that, is enough. That almost like, I don't know, and I am just speculating, but whether or not like things are moving so fast, if all you're doing is partnering with some engine and you build out a bunch of stuff like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be able to work with the engine this way, and then like OpenAI is making changes and fiddling with dials all over the place where they can turn around and be like, oh right, that function, we changed it, sorry. And that's what worries me about some of these companies, and why, like when I hear, and this isn't necessarily Harvey specific, when I hear of AI initiatives kind of faltering towards the end, we thought it was, and I think it still is, kind of a getting that last 10 to 1% over the hump of fixing things. I think that's still a lot of it. But I also wonder if some of it is, we were trying to customize some other company's product without realizing that company keeps futzing with it and then leaves us high and dry.
So you mean don't hitch your wagons to one horse?
Yeah, maybe. It's weird though, because like it's going to be one of those situations where nobody's going to be really excited about you hitching your star to a bunch of horses, and that's when lawyers get involved and make things awful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know.
But they have a new website too, where it's not just join our wait list and nothing more.
Oh,
They
I
have
forgot
like,
to even look at that. Yeah, they told me they were going to put that up, and that
there's
happened
like
after I talked to
things
them.
on it that is not just Harvey. We have a wait list.
Well, that's what makes me wonder about the not having a PR agency or not investing in marketing. I mean, there's a PR playbook that's being followed that seems somewhat sophisticated to me. So I'm not sure I buy that, but either way, it's effective. You know, this has worked in the past and it's working again. So
Oh yeah, I
yeah,
think
no,
the wait list thing was a very intentional move to create mystery. Yes.
but it wasn't just a wait list. It was this website that wasn't even a website with like
Yeah.
a link on it and nothing else. And
Yeah, the website was join our wait list. That's all it was.
right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like almost like over the top, and it's designed to make everyone be like, what's going on? This must be so special. Like,
Sort of like early law firm websites. We're like, we don't really need your business this way.
right.
yeah. I did have. I was just.
If you're looking at the
Very
web,
early,
you can't
the
afford
very
us.
early days of Ross. I have Andrew. Andrew, do you remember this? This is Ross. This is, I think, apparently was supposed to be Ross. This is AI. I found that recently.
Andrew, you never said that to me.
Hey, I'm special.
You are about
Next time.
I'll agree.
Well, you've got another startup, Andrew. You can send us swag. We don't care if it's in the medical field. We're good. All right. So Niki, getting far afield from the area of AI and back into the practical uses of technology in the practice of law, which occasionally we talk about here. You want to tell us about your column this month in the ABA Journal?
Yeah, it's my ABA Journal column, and while it may not be the hottest topic, if you will, I think it was a much needed column because somebody had asked me about matter management for corporate counsel, and when I tried to do a little research, I realized there's not a lot out there that's either behind a paywall or created by the different companies themselves. Like it's just either it's like organizations that cater to corporate counsel that have directories behind their, you know, organizational paywalls or whatever, you have to be a member, or else it's articles that are not neutral because they're written by people from a company that are just trying to put it on their blog to create SEO. So I think it's much needed because for the smaller companies that just have a few corporate counsel, like a few attorneys on staff that may not find it worth a while to be part of these organizations yet, it's hard to sort of sift through what's out there. And the categories are even kind of confusing and overlapping. You know, there's matter management, then there's like contract life cycle management, then there's contract review and analysis software, and AI is getting baked into all of these, which is what we're just going to see across the entire spectrum of legal tech and software products in general. But it really was not an AI article, it was a software article. And so I did as research and found as much information as I could that wasn't behind paywalls, and just, you know, do what I typically do in my ABA articles, journal articles, which is write about a category of software, talk about what it is, talk about why it's needed, explain things to think about when you choose it. And then I listed some of the contenders in the space, just to give a, you know, an array of options out there. So nothing like earth-shattering, but I think it was probably a pretty useful article. And so I just wanted to share it, put it out there.
It's probably the stuff that's not earth-shattering that's of most interest to lawyers practicing right now. The earth-shattering stuff will hit them eventually, but
The other thing that was
notable,
I think that's notable just in terms of distinguishing this from other softwares, even though it is matter management software, which is what law practice management software is, the functions are really, really different. You know, Victor and I went back and forth because he's my editor and talked about this a little bit after I submitted the article, because corporate counsel's a small law firm within a company, but it works very differently than your typical small law firm, right? It outsources stuff to outside counsel. It has to manage outside counsel's work and track it. Its client is the company and the people in the company. And so It has to have a lot of intake in terms of all different types of matters that are coming in and be able to have visibility across the team and communication amongst the team. But it also has lots of contracts to manage and analyze and track. And so integrations really matter, but the integrations are very different than the ones that you see in practice management software. And some of those integrations include the tools that companies work in, like, Workday, and it needs to be work with Okta, for data security. And it has to have integrations with Salesforce. So it's sounds a lot like it might be practice management software, but it's an entirely different category because these corporate counsel work so differently. So I thought
it's definitely very informative for me because like I think my exact question to her was like, isn't this just practice management? So I learned a little bit from this and it was good. It was good for me to learn about it. And so I definitely recommend people take a look at it. But I think that was our exact conversation. I was like, well, wait a minute, isn't this just blah blah blah?
Yep. All right. Well, the story I did want to talk about this week was the fact that the ABA has finally come out with the ethics opinion we've been waiting 30 years for now, which is on the legal ethics of using listservs. Now that there probably isn't a lawyer in the country who's using a listserv, we finally have the definitive word on what should be done on it. I have no idea. This is just the most baffling ethics opinion to me from the ABA. They did this a couple of years ago when they did the one on legal blogging that was in 2019 or something like that, and I actually wrote a column at the time on Above the Law about the fact that that opinion finally came out on blogging 20 years after lawyers had started blogging, and the opinion referred to it as the newest thing in lawyer publishing or something like that. And now 30 years after the first lawyers listservs, and
Died.
back in the day, I mean, listservs were really very popular back in the day. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, Nikki, I don't know if I used to be on Solo Says, and that's how I think that's how I first met Carolyn Elephant, was through Solo Says, and a number of other people who I know to this day I met through that listserv, and there were any other number of listservs in the day that were very active and I was very much involved in. But these days, I mean, I know there are still some listservs, but it just seems like such an outdated technology. So I don't know.
I agree. At first glance, I thought the same thing. And I agree that it seems like, if nothing else, it's just entirely too late to be writing this thing, and issuing this opinion. But, on my local bar, there's an active listserv for the small firm. And, as a tech company, we'll often get our customers reaching out and telling us, my local listserv, someone said this about another product, you have this feature, or, someone said this about my case, is that true? And so oftentimes we do get a lot of emails from customers who saw something on a listserv somewhere, and it's not a Facebook group and it's not a Google group, it's like an actual listserv. And so when I saw this opinion, I figured I'd send it to my solo and small firm listserv at my local bar, and boy, did it make a splash. Like within 5 minutes, there were like 10 messages, and everyone's like, wow, we want to read this, and thanks for sharing. And so I feel like we're so tech savvy and we're so interested in emerging tech that I think we sometimes lose sight of the fact that a lot of our colleagues are still kind of entrenched in this old school tech more than we might think.
They're still out there listening to the Rolling Stones and stuff like that.
Waiting for that.
Do you think they thought they were talking about something like Facebook than LinkedIn, and they just called it the wrong thing? I mean, is it public who's on that committee? I would claim anonymity if I were on that committee.
Well, there was some guy who posted on LinkedIn in response to my story that, they called it, they wanted to write this about listservs because they really wanted to write about LinkedIn and Facebook, but they didn't want to offend those big companies. So they wrote this as some sort of a subterfuge way of getting at talking about lawyers on social media. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. Because a lawyer who's researching the ethics of using LinkedIn isn't going to go out and search listservs and find something.
In fact, most lawyers never heard of a listserv.
Right.
But maybe their new AI assisted search engine will figure out that connection.
Maybe.
I feel
Well,
like
I don't pretend to have any kind of insight into, because obviously ABA ethics opinions are completely out of my jurisdiction, and we don't have any overlap with them, and they do stuff on their own. We don't have any kind of overlap. So, but so I mean, yeah, that conspiracy theory about that does seem a little far fetched based on what I do know about them and what I have heard about them and whatnot. But I do think, and I think I saw that same LinkedIn thread, or someone pointed out that, like, listservs are still fairly common amongst law librarians. They still use them a lot, and I mean, I think someone else made the point that, like, probably this has become a problem for some people, either a generational thing, maybe people who are just coming up through the ranks who don't know what a listserv is and think, okay, well, I can just do whatever on it, and if there's no ethics opinion on it, then I can I can do whatever I want, and I'm not gonna get in trouble for it. So I mean, maybe there was some kind of need out there for an opinion like this because people either are using them and not using them correctly, or not really understanding what they're about or what they can and can't do on them, or I mean, clearly some people in legal profession still use them and still rely on them. So it's not it's not like a Betamax where, like, nobody's using it anymore. So until it gets to that point, then I think there is always going to be a need for some kind of opinion to cover it, because otherwise then they can say, oh well, hey, there was nothing there. I didn't know what I could and couldn't do on it because you guys didn't say anything.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of that, the LinkedIn opinion where they talked about specialties, the New York State Bar's LinkedIn opinion where they analyzed whether you could list a specialty under the specialties category. And by the time the opinion came out, LinkedIn had removed the specialties category. It was like too narrowly focused, that opinion. And I think that's something that the regulators or the committees often fall into, are these narrow focuses that A, makes it a bad opinion that doesn't withstand the test of time, and B, it could have been a much more valuable opinion if they just defined online lawyer group forums, whether it's a listserv, whether it's a LinkedIn group, Facebook group, and just listed all the different alternatives, because that same principle applies in those as well, right? And the big concern that really I thought they really did a good job of explaining is, you initially provide sort of a detailed hypothetical of a potential client or even a new client, to try to get some help or get a referral or whatever the case may be, or an expert witness. And then later the case hits the media and everyone realizes that's who you were talking about. And that's like a perfect example of when this could be problematic. So, it's definitely a significant issue that should be on lawyers' radar, but they really could have made the opinion a lot more valuable if they just expanded the definition of what they were talking about, so that it not only explained what everyone's currently doing now, but also potentially morphed versions of this type of thing in the future, whatever, maybe it's virtual reality and you're talking to a bunch of lawyers in a virtual, I have my Apple Vision Pro, and there's a social media forums on that where people talk in, their virtual personas. You should include that as well. Same difference.
Yeah.
Well, you can't always get what you want, Niki.
I feel like we have to stop right there. I don't know.
Wow, that was pretty good. Yeah, and this may be the last time we ever do this show, because the solar storm that's coming at us we could be reduced to listservs by the end of next week.
Time is not on our side.
Oh wow. I thought I had something that was a fun, like, final thing, but Bob has me under his thumb.
Oh,
God.
Here's a little mother's little helper here.
Right.
Well, oh yeah.
And your 19th nervous breakdown.
Oh.
I was going to ask Victor if you knew, because I have no idea how the ABA decides what issues to issue ethics opinions about. I mean, do they get inquiries from members who say, I'm burning to know the answer to this, or did they just pick them out of a hat, or do you happen to know?
I don't have any kind of insight into that. I mean, I assume there's some kind of, like some kind of like little, like, not a suggestion box, but like one of those like,
Probably have a
like one of those like things where they, like people ask them like, oh, can I, like the COVID thing was a perfect example. Like, oh, if I practice in Florida, can I live in North Carolina, but still like,
Right.
like work that way. So yeah, no, I mean, it's not like you have a bunch of guys in a room that are like, hey, you know what we should do? We should talk about the ethics of of using Blackberries or whatnot. That's a bad example because Blackberries are actually pretty secure. But like, yeah, just stuff like that. Like, I don't think there's like a bunch of guys in a room that just like kind of come up with topics like that. I mean, I imagine there's some kind of demand or
Somebody
some kind of
faxes in the
request.
questions.
Yeah,
They're
well,
spinning a wheel and
they
it's
send
like,
they send a messenger pigeon,
Yeah,
or smoke
like-
signals. Yeah.
mail merge. Let's talk about that.
Anybody catch the news item on what's it called, Marketplace, the NPR show this week on the prevalence of fax machines among legal professionals and government officials in Germany? How it's still like a major thing, and how how one law firm and somebody just put it in order for like 60 fax machines or something, and talking to this like fax machine repairman guy who's talking about business is booming and he's doing so well, and
Do they represent the fax machine
That's
maker?
what I was gonna say. Is this a government procurement issue?
yeah, maybe.
I was gonna do a cloud joke too. Time to get off my cloud,
Yeah.
I was gonna
all
tell a
right.
joke, but I was waiting on my friend to finish. Remember that song? Waiting on a
Yep.
friend? The best I can come up with. I'm really bad at this stuff. You guys are a
Yeah.
lot better.
Well,
All
actually,
right.
somebody just pointed out that banks ask for faxes, and somebody did ask me to allow them to send me a fax recently. That
Well,
did
our
happen.
fax is supposed to be more secure than. I mean, are they
Yeah.
supposed to be? Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I can see why paranoid people would be like,
Yeah.
no, don't put it in Dropbox, don't put it in
Well,
Gmail.
law firms do not like Dropbox.
Yeah.
Well, you know how you cover up sensitive information on a fax? Paint it black.
Oh, we're done, I guess.
Ah, I
All
do
right.
love a good theme show. Yeah.
All right, we can do. We'll have to pick like a band to have the
Right,
theme
the
for
band of the
puns.
week, yeah.
Band of the week.
I
I
do
like
love
that.
this.
Band on the Run. We'll do, but I don't want to do Paul McCartney's.
One of those two obscure bands that Jane saw in 1960, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Well, Taylor Swift is restarting her Eras tour, so we could always do like a Taylor Swift section.
Oh, well,
so.
you're going to run laps around us with that,
Yeah.
Victor.
That's true.
you know?
Yeah.
You youngsters will have to make all those jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. If we go down that road, give me shelter.
we're never gonna stop. Everyone's gonna want to have the last song reference. We're not. Well, this is not going to be a never-ending show, right? I don't have a song reference, so don't wait for me to say something.
All right. And anyone got a final pun? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. All right.
We're gonna
that
Harlem
does it.
shuffle out of here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for a great show, and look forward to seeing you all back here next Friday with the band of the week and some other legal tech news.
Sure.
Thanks. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.